I wasn't supposed to be home until late afternoon. My doctor's office had called to cancel the checkup last minute, so I swung by the grocery store, grabbed a few things, and pulled into the driveway around noon. The front door was unlocked. I paused. As soon as I stepped inside, I noticed the silence wasn't quite right. It wasn't quiet. It was muffled, like something was off balance. I walked down the hallway and stopped short. My nightstand was leaning against the wall. Beside it, my dresser. Drawers half open, lamp cords dangling. I dropped the grocery bag. Upstairs, I heard voices. I climbed slowly, as if maybe I'd misunderstood, as if maybe someone had broken in and they needed help. But no. I reached the master bedroom and froze in the doorway. Ezra stood with a paint roller in one hand and a tray in the other. Ivy was crouched near the wall, flipping through paint swatches. Ezra looked up. "Oh, hey, Mom. You're back early." I didn't answer. "We're repainting," he said casually. "Figured we'd freshen it up before we move in." "Move in." My voice barely made it out. Ivy stood. "We talked about this. With rent so high and the baby plans? It just makes sense. And Mom's coming too, just for a while." I blinked. "Mom?" My mom, Ivy, clarified. "Lois. She'll stay in the guest room or maybe downstairs." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I scanned the room, the walls half covered in a pale pink I'd never choose. The bed was stripped. The art was gone. Ezra glanced at me like I was being difficult for not smiling. "We just figured it was time to make it feel like home again." My stomach churned. I turned and walked back downstairs, past the grocery bag I never picked up. In the kitchen, my coffee mugs were no longer where I left them. Even the table had been rotated facing the living room now, not the window. I didn't sit down. That night I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to my house breathe like it was trying to remember who it belonged to. They don't know what it cost me to build this house. Mark and I started with dirt under our nails and a blueprint drawn on napkins. We laid the foundation one weekend at a time, after work, after dinner, after helping Ezra with homework. Every paycheck built something. One bought the insulation, the next bought tile. We framed the windows ourselves. The porch was his idea. The fireplace was mine. We weren't rich, but we were steady. This house was the proof. Ezra grew up measuring himself against the doorframe in the hallway. He lost his first tooth in the kitchen, learned to ride a bike on the gravel driveway that Mark poured by hand. Now I watch him from the edge of my own doorway, holding a tape measure up to the closet like he's appraising square footage. Not memories. Ivy's sitting cross-legged in the middle of the floor, flipping through a folder of fabric samples. "We're thinking soft grays or maybe sage green," she says, without looking up. "It'll open the space." She's not talking to me. She doesn't have to. From the hallway, I hear her voice lowered. She'll adjust once it's done. Give it a week. Tops. Lois murmurs something I can't hear, but I've heard enough. They think I'm too tired to care, too polite to say no, too old to fight. That night, I don't make dinner. I don't turn on the TV. I sit on the edge of the bed, what's left of it, and stare at the walls that are now half painted, like they're halfway gone. Then I get up. I walk into the office, close the door, and open my laptop. I type slowly at first, then with purpose. Emergency Deed Protection, Colorado homeowner, elderly. I click the first link, then the next. Then I start making a list. They want to treat this house like a fresh start. They forgot it already belongs to someone. I only left town for 3 days. A short trip to see Evelyn, my college roommate. She's been in hospice care, and I didn't want to wait until it was too late. When I pulled into the driveway, there were 5 cars parked on the street. I didn't recognize a single one. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Music. Laughter. People I'd never seen before stood in my kitchen, my living room, holding wine glasses from my cabinet, placing appetizers on platters I hadn't used in years. A banner stretched across the mantel. Housewarming. Ivy and Ezra's new beginning. I stood there, frozen. Someone brushed past me with a full glass and said, "Oh, you must be Ivy's aunt." Cute house, Lois was in my armchair, the one Mark used to nap in every Sunday. She was sipping wine like she owned the place, legs crossed, telling someone about the design flow of the open kitchen. I stepped forward. My voice was calm, flat. "This is still my home." Ivy turned mid-laugh and blinked, startled. "We thought you were staying until Monday. Ezra said you left the spare key." "I did. For emergencies." Ezra appeared from the hallway with a bottle of wine in each hand. "Mom," he said a little too loud, "you're back early." I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. I scanned the room again. The photos moved, the rug replaced, even my plants rearranged. People laughed as if this place had never belonged to anyone but them. I turned and walked upstairs. In my room, I locked the door behind me. The scent of fresh paint still clung to the air. Half the furniture was missing. My closet was slightly open. Ivy's jacket hung from one of the hooks. I sat down at the small desk by the window and opened my phone. 2 messages. One to my lawyer. One to a locksmith. Every inch of this house has a memory etched into it. Mark and I picked the tile for the kitchen during a thunderstorm. We argued in the parking lot over glossy versus matte, and then made up over cheap tacos in the back of his truck. We installed the windows ourselves. One brutal spring weekend, he cut the frames, I held the level, and we both cursed until the sun went down. He wanted big panes to let in more light. I just wanted something we could afford. When he died, I couldn't bear to leave. People told me to sell, start fresh, move somewhere easier. But how do you walk away from the last thing you built together? I stayed. I kept it standing. And I didn't ask anyone for help. Now Ivy walks through the halls talking about flow and modernizing. She calls it a multi-generational home, like we're building a brand, not living lives. Ezra. My Ezra asked me if he could knock down the guest room wall. Just to open up the space, he said, like it wasn't the room where his father took his last breath. No, I told him. One word. Firm. Final. He blinked like he didn't expect resistance, like he didn't know I still had a spine. That night, I heard Lois downstairs talking loudly on the phone to someone, probably Ivy. Her voice carried up the stairs like it always did. "She'll cave," she said. "Ezra's her only child. She always folds." I stood in the dark hallway and listened. Then I walked to my bedroom, opened the closet, and knelt beside the safe. Inside the trust documents. Mark and I set it up years ago after his first surgery. It kept the house protected should anything happen. I reread every page. Slowly. Carefully. Then I took out a pen, added a clause, and placed it back where it belonged. I didn't need permission. I just needed to be ready. They were in the kitchen. I was upstairs in the hallway, just out of view. I wasn't trying to spy. But when someone stands in your kitchen plotting with the door wide open, you're allowed to listen. Ezra's voice was hushed, but not enough. If we say she gifted it to us, he said we can file the transfer before she does anything. Probate'll be clean. She's old school Ivy, whispered back. She won't fight. Once it's done, she'll just adjust. She'll be out within weeks. I pressed my back against the wall. The house didn't feel like it was holding me anymore. It felt like it was bracing me. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't confront them. There was no point shouting at people who already considered you a formality, a hurdle. I waited until morning and called Nolan, the lawyer I'd worked with when Mark died. "I need to confirm something," I said. "You're still listed as sole trustee and beneficiary," he replied after pulling the records. "It's a living trust, Callan. No one can touch the house, not unless you change the documents. What if they try to fake verbal permission? Then we handle it in court, but we'll be ready." I hung up and stared at the living room from the top of the stairs. Ivy had rearranged the photos again, hers framed, mine boxed. I opened my laptop and changed the passwords to everything. The smart locks, the cameras, even the cloud backup. Then I deleted Ezra's access and reset the app notifications to go directly to me. If they wanted to treat this like business, fine. I'd respond like it was war. By midnight, I'd secured the house in every way, but physically. That part would come soon enough. They went out that morning. Lois's voice trailed from the driveway about tile samples and discount sofas. Ezra followed behind her with a tape measure. Ivy was already in the passenger seat, texting with someone, and laughing too loudly for 9:00 a.m. As soon as the car backed out, I moved. I called Mike, a contractor I'd known for years. He was the one who helped Mark install the front gate, back when we still thought retirement would be slow. "How fast can you be here?" I asked. 20 minutes. By the time he arrived, I had already cleared their things. Everything they'd moved into the guest room, the master closet, even the drawers in the bathroom, they were packed neatly, labeled, and stacked by the door. Mike didn't ask questions. He replaced the front, back, and side door locks. I gave him a tip in cash and a cup of strong coffee, and when he left, I stood alone in the hallway for a long moment and just breathed. I printed a note in bold letters and taped it to the front door. "This home is not your residence. Entry is unauthorized. Please contact the owner to arrange retrieval of any personal property." They pulled into the driveway at 12:43 p.m. The second Ivy saw the paper, she froze. Ezra stormed forward, tried the doorknob, and then pounded his fist against it. "Mom, open the damn door." Lois stepped back, cupped her hands around her mouth, and shouted through the window. "You've lost your mind, Callan." "This is family," I said. "Open up." I didn't speak. I didn't flinch. They shouted for 3 minutes straight. Then they stood there in silence, waiting for me to break. But I never moved. The house had been quiet for 4 days. No texts, no calls, no footsteps pounding down my hallway. I drank my coffee by the window, folded laundry, and let the silence settle like clean air after a storm. Then, on Friday morning, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Back door. I opened the security app. Ezra stood just outside the rear entrance, wearing that same black hoodie he used to mow lawns in as a teenager. In his hand, something small, shiny. He tried the key. It didn't turn. He jiggled it, forced it, stepped back, tried again. Then he looked over both shoulders. I watched as he walked to his car, popped the trunk, and pulled out a crowbar. He returned to the door and shoved it into the frame. Metal against wood. He jammed harder this time, jaw tight, body hunched like a stranger breaking in, not a son coming home. The alarm blared. Lights flashed from the window sensors. Ezra froze. He backed away, panicked, and dropped the crowbar. He glanced up at the camera, right into it, before grabbing the tool and sprinting to his car. He peeled away tires, screaming down the street. I sat perfectly still on the edge of the couch phone, still in my hand footage, still playing on loop. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. But something inside me folded, closed like a book with no more pages to give. That afternoon, I got dressed, drove to the police station, and walked up to the front desk. "I need to file a report," I said. The officer looked up. "About what, ma'am?" "Ann attempted break-in." I held up my phone. "By my son." He took the statement, watched the footage, and nodded. Ezra's face was clear. His actions were clearer. "We'll follow up," the officer said. When I got home, the house felt heavier. Not with fear, not even with grief, just with the weight of everything I now knew for sure. I turned off the lights downstairs and waited for the phone to ring. The phone rang just after midnight. I let it buzz twice before I picked up. I already knew who it would be. Callan Lois snapped no greeting. "What the hell have you done?" I stayed quiet. "They arrested Ezra. At our house. In front of the neighbors. How dare you call the police on your own son?" I took a breath. He brought a crowbar to my back door. He wasn't going to use it. He did use it. I have the footage. You're blowing this out of proportion. You know he's been under pressure. You raised him better than this. I let that sink in. Then I said clearly, and without shaking Lois, if you want me to drop the charges, there will be conditions. Silence. Then tightly, I'm listening. No more visits, no more calls, no texts, no surprises. You leave me and this house alone. Permanently. What are you talking about? Ezra's your family. I'm done being your backup plan. I'm done being your blueprint for comfort. You've all made your choices. Now live with them, without me. She didn't like it. I could hear it in her breath, her pause, the way she finally muttered, "Fine." "Say it clearly," I said. "You drop the charges. We leave you alone. No more contact. Ever." I hung up without another word. The next morning, I walked into the police station and formally withdrew the complaint. The officer raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. "He's lucky," he said, filing it away. Ezra was released by noon. There was no thank you, no apology, no knock on my door. I stood by the window as his car passed the street, not slowing, not turning. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel bitter. What I felt was space-wide, still untouched. Like someone had finally stopped pressing on my ribs. I turned away from the window, made a fresh cup of coffee, and sat at my kitchen table for the first time in weeks. Then I opened my laptop and started looking up local grants for women in engineering. 6 months passed, and the silence held. No texts, no knocks. No voices echoing down my hallway, pretending they belonged there. It was like they'd finally understood that the locks weren't the only thing I'd changed. I started small. I repainted the kitchen in the soft golden hue Mark once joked made the room look like morning. Every brushstroke felt like exhaling. I didn't rush it. I let the walls dry between coats, left the windows open to let the scent drift out and something better drift in. Out on the porch, I planted mint and marigolds. Mint for the tea I no longer shared, and marigolds because they always came back no matter how cold the winter had been. I updated my will. The house once promised in so many unspoken ways would go to a fund I'd just finished setting up, one that would sponsor girls pursuing careers in engineering and architecture, girls who wanted to build things and keep them. No one from the family would get a cent, not because of spite, but because of truth. They'd shown me what they valued. I was just doing the same. One morning, I decided to finally clear out the guest room. It had become a quiet dumping ground over the years, extra blankets unopened, mail, half-used paint supplies. As I folded a dusty duvet and reached into the back of the closet, I found it, a candle. The label was pink and flowery, and in Ivy's handwriting, "Welcome home." I held it for a moment, not long. Then I walked it straight to the bin, dropped it in, and shut the lid without a sound. Some things aren't worth keeping, not even to remember. That afternoon, I opened the windows, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and sat in the living room with my to-do list and a pen. There were shelves to repair, a light fixture to update, maybe even a new coat of paint in the entryway, not to cover what had been taken, but to mark what I'd taken back. I was at the hardware store picking up new hinges for the hallway closet when I heard someone call my name, Callan. I turned. It was Dana, a cousin on Mark's side. We hadn't spoken in years, no bad blood, just time and distance doing what it does. We exchanged the usual pleasantries. "How's work? How's your health?" Then she leaned in like she had something delicate to hand me. "I ran into Lois at the pharmacy," she said. "Ezra and Ivy moved back in with her. I think they're expecting." I didn't flinch. I just nodded, once a polite curve of my mouth. Dana went on saying something about how hard things must be for them, but I'd already drifted away politely, silently, the way I've learned to. At home, I set the hinges on the kitchen counter and walked into the living room. The light was soft through the east window, catching the frame on the far shelf. One I hadn't looked at in months. It was a photo from the first year we broke ground. Mark stood in the background, hammer raised, laughing about something I can't remember now. The house behind him was barely studs and beams, but it was ours. Every inch earned. I dusted the frame and placed it on the end table beside my coffee mug. Still here, still mine, still standing. I turned toward the hallway, listening to the creak in the floorboards I knew by heart. Then I picked up the toolbox and got back to work.